Hi guys, it's Deborah from north of somewhere Nomad, and I am back on Vancouver Island. I got here 2 days ago, and mostly I've had, I guess what you could call is a post-travel crash. So what I'm going to do is share some of my experiences, what I felt, just, you know, be vulnerable because car life isn't all rainbows and unicorns. So yeah, I'm going to share some of that with you. And here we go. So, just out the gate, I want to just start by acknowledging that car life, van life, any kind of nomadic life, it's a culture. It's a culture that's different from mainstream, what I call normal. Society runs in such a way that, there's a periphery. When you're doing car life or van life and you're doing a nomadic lifestyle, whatever that entails, you're basically stepping outside of the lines of what is considered normal, right? And so from my experience, I've always been a bit of a nomad, like wandering. I've moved a lot. I was an Air Force brat, so it's kind of in my DNA, moving, and I like to experience tons of different things. That's still considered a little bit on the outside of the norm, like what normies would consider normal. And there's nothing wrong with being normal or staying within the confines of what society expects and all of that. There's nothing wrong with that. But when you're a little bit different and you're on, a different path, you stand out a bit, right? And my car life journey has been really smooth sailing. For the past, 8 years or so, I've been living on Vancouver Island. And Vancouver Island it's just amazing. Everybody just does their thing, and there's not really a normal out here, especially van life and car life. There's a huge culture here around that lifestyle. And I'm okay with, being outside of the norm. Always sort of had one foot in and one foot out. Like I've lived in a home, like a sticks and bricks. So that part has kept me sort of anchored into what's considered normal. And normal as in you go to university, you get a job, you get married, you buy a house, you have kids, and that's kind of the trajectory of most people in what I call normal. I think for the most part, people conform to that because it's not easy being on the outside, even though to me, living the way I choose to live is me honoring myself and being authentic. I think a lot of people, this is my theory, are not living within their authentic self. Not everybody. I think a lot of people really enjoy that. Human nature for us to want to be accepted and a part of something. But those of us who aren't, those of us who really thrive on living the way we want to, it doesn't matter what it is, but specifically car lifers and van lifers, because we're a different breed, right? And okay, right. So getting to the crux of what I experienced while I was out of my comfort zone, you could say, off the island, away from my familiar, The whole point of this journey was to go up north to get my tires and visit with my kids. And, then the plan was after that I would come back to the island, my comfort zone. But I changed course. So after I left Fort St. John, I decided that I would go visit some provincial parks. And I decided to go down to the Okanagan So make that loop and then come back through Vancouver to the ferry, because the original plan was I would leave Fort St. John and go through along the coast, Whistler, Squamish, and then there's the ferry, because I really wanted to avoid Vancouver. Should have listened to my gut. So anyway, I went the other way, and I had an amazing time when I was at Whiskers Point. That was where I did my car tour video, and it was just the most beautiful campsite. But that's where I started to notice, and there was another hiccup along the way that kind of upped the ante of this sense that I was getting. Right, so I left Whiskers Point, and then I started going through some different provincial parks towards Kelowna, so the whole Okanagan. And I decided that I would stay in provincial parks rather than rest stops or any other kind of, really off the beaten track, because I felt safe at these provincial parks, right? So when I'm at these provincial parks, I usually find a, spot that's way off on it, a little bit more secluded from the other spots, because they can be really close together. And when I was car camping with my tent, it didn't really matter. I fit in, because I legitimately looked like I was camping, and I was. But on this experience, because I didn't have my SUV tent, I was just sleeping in my car, which is totally normal for me now. I haven't used my SUV tent in, I don't know, a month or so. And I quite like not having that extra baggage. So I started to notice me car camping without my SUV tent. I started to stand out a little bit. I wasn't the majority of the people that were camping on this end of the province had humongous RVs, and they were like in groups, and there was tons of kids, and they had all the floaties and the whole camping experience. There's nothing wrong with that, and I was also going into these campgrounds as a first come first serve, so I pretty much had to take what was available. And there was one campsite that I went to, and the only spot was like in the middle of the whole campground, and the sites were really close. There wasn't a lot of trees, so I stood out like a sore thumb. And it was the first time I really felt different, and people looked at me differently, and they were a little bit like standoffish, like it was this woman, because at night everybody would go into their tents or their RVs, and here I am just crawling into my car and going to sleep, and then waking up in the morning, my usual routine. And it was just like, I really felt how different I was from everybody else. Here on the island, there's everything, and there's a little bit of everything in these campsites, and quite a few people living in their car. I can tell the difference. And so I've always felt really accepted, or never just like, I never felt ostracized, but that's how I started to feel, and that's on me. And maybe these people weren't, but I totally felt different. Even here's what happened too, where I feel like I betrayed myself a bit, because once in a while people would, talk to you, be like, where are you from? Where do you live? Right? And I felt this choking sensation. I would say, I live in the place where I lived in the cabin. They're like, oh yeah, that's so cool. Yeah. So that's the first part that I started to realize. So when I crashed, I went to the ocean, because I felt like I had to reflect on what was happening with me. That's important to me to know, because if I don't get to the root of it, it's uncomfortable. It's a really uncomfortable feeling for me. And anyway, so that's what I started to experience, just really feeling different. So that feeling was heightened when I got to a campsite called Allison Lake, which is just outside of Vernon. So now I'm outside of a pretty major, not a major city, but well-populated city, which was a half an hour from Kelowna. And then I started having car issues. It's a whole story in and of itself. So it's just basically this continuous stuttering in my car when I accelerate. So it was getting worse in that area. I had left the campground, went into Vernon to do laundry and go to the gym. And didn't feel right. And I still had another, whatever, 600 kilometers to go to get back to the island. So I kind of panicked and phoned the dealership because I had researched what was going on. And apparently there was this extended warranty for 2014 Ford Fiestas related to transmission stuff that Ford was honoring by extending. So I thought, I think that's what my thing is. Anyway, I went to the Ford dealership, and again, when you go into, what a normal setting, they take your car, they put it on the hoist, da da da. So of course my car is camperized, and when I talked to the guy at the beginning, and this is just me, this is how I interpreted this, it was a whole different vibe after he saw the vehicle. He pulled it up and then came back to me and talked about the issue. So it started compounding, like it was layer on top of layer on top of layer, and I was just starting to feel so uncomfortable. I have accepted, like, I chose this lifestyle, and I chose it in an environment that's very conducive to living in a vehicle, being a nomad, car life or van life or all the things here on the island. It's just accepted. So that's where it really struck me. And then I thought, after I figured out the whole car, which cost me a little bit more money, and it turned out to be a clutch issue, yada yada yada, didn't matter at that point. I just wanted to get my butt out of this environment. From Kelowna, I made the decision to just boot it back to the island, and that's what I did. So I had to drive through a few more towns, and then I went on the number 1 highway, which is, Chilliwack, Abbotsford, and then into Vancouver. Oh my God, that drive was so brutal for me. It was literally from Abbotsford to Vancouver, which is about 60 kilometers. It was just stop, parking lot traffic on both directions. So I was just like overwhelmed. So then I realized how different I was, how I went through all this analyzing of my experience, and what I came down to is I feel proud of myself to make a decision to live in a way that honors who I am and what makes me happy and da da da. But I also realized that, of course, once I got back to Vancouver Island, I was like, why do I feel so horribly? I was conflicted because I'm living a life that I love and want, and all of that stuff. There are some little issues that stress me out a bit, and but I deal with them. It's just like any choice that we make. There's going to be a little bit of wobble, and then you got to solve the problem. That's how it works. But I decided, what I realized is that I had dishonored myself because I just didn't step into it at times where I was in a challenging situation. And maybe these people would have thought that was cool. Here's what I get. A lot of people, the people who I tell that I'm, car camping permanently, full-time, living in my vehicle, either I get, wow, that's so cool, or people look at me like I'm a little bit, they're just like, oh, okay, yeah, oh, wow, okay, cool. And I'm okay with that. And I do that on the island. So that experience was what kind of tipped me down into, I don't know, not depressed, but I was just like, oh my God, what am I doing? Am I doing the right thing for myself? Do I want to be that much outside of the periphery? When the car started acting out, I was like really concerned, because I thought, if something goes wrong with my car, what do I do? I mean, there are solutions to that, but I felt very vulnerable. And it made me question it, what am I doing? Am I doing the right thing for me? And every time I was like, yes. There's just a couple of things that I feel need to be shifted. And that is, I think I need more room, and then I have to deal with the winter. Like, I feel like if I had a van, it would solve all my problems. But I don't have a van right here in this moment. And so while I want to move towards that, I have to accept where I am and what I have. And that part for me, acceptance is the medicine. So that's what all this was. It was like processing, all these different things. Oh, and I'm glad for it, because I wouldn't have had, if I hadn't had that experience, I wouldn't have known that there are unresolved things within me. Oh my God. When I got back to the island, I just had to process all of that and figure out, what do I want? What is this a solid decision for me, and I think that's good for all of us to really, at some point, reevaluate the decisions we've made. Because if we make the wrong decision, there's always room for course correct, or get solid with whatever your decision, like this, I'm speaking about myself, get solid with that decision and then embrace. Because that's not what I was doing in these campgrounds. I felt like I needed to hide, or I was embarrassed. The whole gamut of those kinds of emotions. And I didn't like it. Because one of the most important things I value in me and in others is authenticity, and owning, your shit, and figure it out. Because I don't project my shit onto anybody. And I know when someone is like in that place where they're not living their authentic self, they will spew their ugly on you or others, right? That's kind of how it works, until the ugly you can't deal with it anymore. And then it's like a catalyst that will force you into coming to terms with the shit and then work it out. Take accountability. Anyway, that's my philosophy. Okay, guys, that felt good to put out there. If any of this is like too heavy for you, just turn the channel off. Just walk away. Okay, guys, so I feel like I really shared a lot here, and I didn't want to, but I felt like, even that wouldn't have been authentic. So I'm keeping my journey real, and a lot of you have commented that you like that about my channel, and so I appreciate that. And I'm going to keep doing that. And it's hard, but that's what I feel shifts us up, levels us up, is to face the uncomfortable, face other people's ugly, face like all of that. And I am dealing with that. Oh, so it's just been a real soul thing for me. I'm so grateful to be back on Vancouver Island. The first thing I did was hit the beach. I'm going to start working out regularly, clean up my diet. Oh man, was I eating stuff that I just went off the rails a bit. That's fine. It's all about course correct, right? So anyways, guys, I just wanted to share that with you because I didn't know where to pick up. Hi, I'm back on the island. Let's talk about blah, blah, blah. Because I can't. And this is my channel, and I want to show others who are interested in this lifestyle, or who are living it and don't know how to process. I believe all van lifers and car lifers go through phases of loving it, not loving it, blah, blah, blah. So yeah, I'm just sharing from my heart. And for those who receive it, great. If you don't, let it go. So I'm going to close out this video now, guys. And I really appreciate all the beautiful comments and support that I get from my subscribers, or even just people landing on my channel. And so I just want to say I appreciate you guys so much. So I'm going to close out this video. If you like it, hit like. And if you want to see more content from me, hit that subscribe button, and I will see you guys in my next video. Take care.